From every corner of this country down to the streets of Tampa Bay, Black history is often bleak and painful. Remnants of those dark times still permeate throughout our area, but whether it's during slavery or the civil rights movement, Black people still shined. This excellence still radiates today in historic gems like Beula Institutional Baptist Church, the first Black Baptist church in Tampa Bay. Welcome in and good evening to you. I'm Deanne King. Thank you for joining us as we honor Black history with Rooted in Excellence. Throughout the next hour, you'll be inspired by your own neighbors who work day in and day out to preserve Black history and continue our ancestors' legacies. From those rooted in their faith to those making a difference on the farmland, even physicians creating their own medical devices, and educators ensuring legislation doesn't keep the next generation from learning Black history. I'm joined now by the incredible team who went into our community to share your stories. Ty Russell, Lenny Sue Paul, Marilyn Parker. We're here talking about all things Black excellence, right? And so I want to know, what does Black excellence mean to you, Ty?
Well, to me, it's about more than just words. It's about the actions, especially when people are not seeing you. What you're doing to advance our Black community, especially our Black youth. That, to me, is Black excellence.
Yeah, sometimes you want to make sure folks aren't just doing things for the cameras,
exactly.
so to speak, right?
Exactly.
Lenny, what does Black excellence mean to you?
I would say going above average, but then even further. One woman said her dad always demanded excellence, and that is why she's so successful today, and she continues to pour in using her own money to make a difference in Haiti.
Wow, you don't see that.
No.
You don't see that happening a lot these days.
No donations, her own money.
Wow, that's incredible. Can't wait to hear more about that story. Marilyn, what does Black excellence mean to you?
I think it's generational. I think it's recognizing where you come from and what is in you and making space for not just yourself, but for everyone around you who can define these spaces. So history, we're walking history.
Yes.
We do it every day. I think that's what Black excellence looks like.
You look at the time in which we're in right now, and I think when we have Black History Month and when we talk about Black history, people think slavery. People think all of these negative things, right? But really, it's such a beauty within the Black culture and within Black excellence. So what's some beauty that you found in the story that you told, Ty?
Well, I believe that there's so much beauty in the state of Florida. I was able to travel to meet some of our Black rural residents and Black farmers. And it just shows what they are doing to help put food on our tables in our cities and in our smaller communities. It's just beautiful.
I'm so looking forward to hearing your story. Lenny, what about you? What's some beauty you found in the story you told?
There's one word that I continue to lean on, and it's love. Not a lot of people hear that word. And it's something that a woman that I spoke to pours into people during their darkest hour.
Wow, and we need that. We need love and we need to be uplifting, right? Marilyn, what about you?
I think the main theme that I'm going to bring in this story is talking about how there is nothing new under the sun. Our ancestors, we've all been there before. There's nothing new under the sun, but it's what you do with right now that matters.
Yeah, and speaking of right now, Black history started for me in the church. I don't know about y'all started in the church, right? We have been rooted in the church. So actually we're going to hear from a man who has been rooted in the Black church for well over 6 decades.
The first thing that Black folks ever owned in this country was a Black church. Out of the Black church came fraternities, sororities, Black businesses, Blacks in politics. It was all grounded in the Black church.
At a time where African Americans were enslaved, stripped of their names and away from their families, considered property, not even human, the only thing they had was each other and their faith. In 1777, they congregated and created the first Black Baptist church in the country, nestled in Savannah, Georgia. Nearly a century later, in 1863, Tampa built its first church for Black parishioners, Mount Sinai African Methodist Episcopal Church. 2 years down the line came the very church I'm standing in today, Beula Baptist. The Black church has been the backbone of African American culture for centuries, from slavery until now. In my exclusive interview with Reverend Al Sharpton, he shares how his decades of activism came right from the pulpit.
Well, I want to show you one more thing.
At 70 years old,
Right behind my desk.
Reverend Al Sharpton keeps his humble beginnings close.
I was 7 years old doing a Tom Thumb wedding at Washington Temple.
But by 7, Sharpton already had 3 years of preaching experience.
I would come home from church and put on my mother's bathrobe and preach to my sister's dolls. And they let me preach at the Junior Usher Boys anniversary. I had to stand up on a platform box.
Sure.
Because I was a little kid. I was 4 years old.
That podium was the first step in Sharpton following his calling.
You merged that calling with activism, especially at a young age, at 17, launching the National Youth Movement. What was the thought behind that?
I kept wanting to do things. So my mother brought me to the bishop again. The bishop said, I know what to do. And he brought me, took me to his house, brought me across the street. There was a guy named Reverend William Jones there, who was Martin Luther King's chapter leader in New York. Wow. I was 13 years old.
At 13, Sharpton had mentors like Mahalia Jackson and was practically raised by James Brown. But there was one person in particular who helped him merge the pulpit and protesting, the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
I really liked Jesse. He was a little younger than them, much older than me, but he had a little swagger, he dressed her, and I became a mentee to Jesse. All of the preachers said, we're going to send you to seminary, get a big church. I didn't want that. I wanted to do what Jesse did. I wanted to be national civil rights. So what I wanted was to build a church-based civil rights group. Don't forget, Martin Luther King's organization was named Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The difference between Dr. King's organization and the NAACP and the Urban League and others is it was centered in the black church and proudly said that.
Why was it so important to stay rooted in the church and make sure your activism actually kind of came from the church itself?
Because I really believed in the church. Think about it. You walk off one day, you are free with no money, no education, no real estate, don't even know where your family is. The only thing you have is believe that God is on your side. What else do you have? And it's that grounding that has brought us through tumultuous times. That's why even these times that we're in now does not rattle me, because we've been through worse times than this.
Sharpton having lived through those times.
Sharpton live! Sharpton live!
From getting stabbed while protesting in 1991.
And I looked down, I saw this knife sticking out of my chest, and it struck me. I said, oh God, I've been stabbed.
To advocating for Michael Griffith, a 23-year-old black man from Howard Beach, Queens, who was beaten to death by a white mob in 1986.
I remember that march because it's easier now for people to say, I'm gonna call Sharpton. But what I remember is when nobody knew who to call, and a woman gave me a chance to do what I felt I was called to do. And I said, I wanna go out there and march and show how racist these people are.
We never got the reparations.
Faith is what got him started, and faith is what carries him through today.
That's when we had the march for George Floyd. During the pandemic, 200,000 people.
What were you thinking in that moment right there?
I couldn't believe in the pandemic we'd get all that amount of people.
Yeah. Did you ever think you'd be here?
No.
No.
Only God could have done it.
History dresses Sharpton's Times Square office. Memories with President Obama, tokens from Nelson Mandela are everyday reminders to keep fighting. While legislation passes removing Black history lessons in classrooms and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are erased, Sharpton believes it's the Black church that can still stand as a cornerstone for change.
I want the Black church to take the forefront again of leading our people to, one, believe in themselves and believing that the same God that we shout and holler about in our churches is the same God that can deal with us in our social justice pursuits, in our politics.
Whether he's preaching on Sundays,
I have called on the commissioner,
or leading social justice efforts, Sharpton continues the work he began at just 4 years old.
The reason I won't leave the stage is I can't let the show end where at the end everything that was achieved is now been canceled. So I'm going to be on this stage to preserve what Dr. King and all of them fought for. That's why I'm still here. And as long as I'm faithful to the calling, I don't care what, I got TV shows, radio shows, and all of that, but I'm still that 4-year-old boy climbing up on that box, believing that God told me to do this.
I mean, what an incredible experience it was to head up to New York and spend that time with Reverend Al Sharpton. But what's even more powerful is the man right here in Tampa who's continuing Sharpton's legacy. Meantime, when we come back, we're uncovering the legacy of one Florida black farmer and the fruits of his labor that continue to nourish generations.
What I get out of this is family legacy and being able to hold on to land that my grandfather started in 1910.
Black history goes beyond the church doors. There's history that goes from farm to table. Black farmers are literally planting the roots of success to keep your plates full. But it is not easy. Over the last 7 decades, many black-owned farmlands have been uprooted and now make up a very small fraction of the agriculture industry. Ty Russell takes us to North Central Florida to meet a black farmer who is already watering the seeds to help the black farming industry grow.
The Hall family farm has been around for at least 4 generations, and John Ronnie Nix, who runs the farm right now, says yes, money is important, but this is more about legacy.
This is Hercules. I've had him about 4 years.
Meet the bull and his main mate.
And this is Cherry. This is my lead cow.
They lead the pack of 35 cattle that munch on bread, hay, and pellets on the Hall family farm that has been around since the 1900s.
Florida raises what we call starter cattle. They usually take them out to Texas and put them on feedlots. And then after that, they go to Kansas City or some processing plant.
That's the next journey, eventually, for many of them. When these are sold and they are turned, I guess, into food, will they be considered organic because of the way that you raise them?
They'll be considered grass-fed.
Nix oversees 100 acres of farmland he owns.
This is interesting. I've never been this close to cows before.
Nix leases another 2,000 acres from a timber company.
What happens when it's cold like today or when there's a freeze or something like that?
They group up.
So they protect each other?
Yeah, and it's not as profitable unless you have a lot of land. I kind of do it because that's what I grew up doing.
I bet that's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. I am a agricultural engineer. I graduated from Kansas State. I went off and I specialized in production agriculture.
Since then, Nix has started the North Central Florida Black Farmers Association. It currently has 16 members who are black farmers and gardeners.
And what made you want to chair and start this organization?
Well, I am very passionate about sustainable food, growing food and healthy food.
He also brings in experts on farming and getting loans. The group also organizes farmers markets.
We just don't have black farmers with, 1,000 acres of land. Part of the reason we lost our farms was because we didn't get the help from the government.
Black people?
Black people didn't get the help.
And why is that?
Well, because the white society wanted the land. And there was discrimination. And so a lot of the local people in agriculture did not open up these programs to small black farmers. So they didn't get the support, especially in the 50s.
That's when black-owned farmland was either sold or lost to taxes.
You're still dealing with discrimination?
There's still a lot of discrimination. It's changing.
Those changes are a good sign for Nix's future plans.
Throw it all the way around. And not so fast, kind of slow it down. What I'm hoping is that my grandson will be able to make this profitable.
And you're doing this for him?
Yes, doing this for the next generation.
And right now you said it's not very profitable, but you're still here. Why is that?
I'm working on a business plan. It's in progress where I want this to be profitable.
That includes weddings and tours. This farmland is already used as a local education resource.
I want it to educate the young people about farming. I do tours with our schools. I bring our kids out and let them see see the cattle.
Do you feel like sometimes black farmers and black people in rural areas are forgotten about?
Sure. And that's another reason for the unity of our North Central Florida. We share resources. If I'm needing an extra tractor or if I need something to help, then we combine resources.
It's all an effort to save and potentially grow black-owned farms that so many in the past have seen disappear.
We had a philosophy in our families that says, get some education in your head and get some dirt under your feet. That's something they can't take from you.
I want to be able to get more background on the impact black farmers have had on the agriculture community. And the best person to talk about that is our good friend, FAMU Emeritus Professor Kome Onokpise, who works with the Brooksville Agricultural and Environmental Research Station. Thank you so much for joining us. And talk to me a little bit about the impact black farmers have had on the agriculture industry since the slave era.
Yes, black farmers since the slave era have contributed immensely, not only to the types of crops that came from the old world to the new world, such as soybean, peanuts, and cotton that they've produced. And since about the 1900s, that black farmer population has declined, but they continue to make impact and to produce crops. And you'll soon find that some of the agricultural technologies that we use today, such as seed planters and cotton planters, were all the inventions of black farmers.
But they faced discrimination, and then there was a court case and a settlement from the USDA. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, when black farmers used to go to USDA for programs that were designed by USDA for farmers in general, black farmers faced this discrimination about completing forms, because a lot of times people don't understand that farmers do get a lot of resources like soil conservation, building farm fences. All of those come from USDA programs. But the black farmers have had issues. They were faced with this, oh, you got to complete that form or the other form, so they never got those program funds to do those same things, even though in most cases their farms were a lot smaller than the bigger farmers.
And then I know that you are still fighting to see the number of black farms grow, and I love what your organization is doing. And Professor, as always, thank you so much for talking to us. I really do appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
What an incredible and impactful conversation from Ty. And I think it's important that we take heed to what Ty was just talking about and make sure we're educating our youth so we can see more of us in the agriculture realm. Now, from feeding our souls to saving lives, coming up after the break, we're spotlighting a black doctor whose unique invention is assisting in modern medicine. And also, a little bit later, a Tampa shop where history isn't just preserved, it's alive. From 1950s book bans to hidden gems, find out how the past is shaping our future.
To be able to compete, you have to be far higher in terms of your education and your skills.
Unrelenting disparities in healthcare continues to take a toll on the black community, from maternal health to men's wellness. Despite the disparities, there are women rooted in making sure health is equitable for all. Lenny Supal introduces us to a groundbreaking physician in Wesley Chapel.
Tell me your story. When did all this start exactly?
As an infectious disease physician, Dr. Pamela Noel's dedication to her patients runs deep.
What are you allergic to?
Her work extends far beyond her Wesley Chapel practice, stretching to her home country of Haiti.
My ultimate goal with all these business ideas that I have is to have income to be able to build a hospital.
The Florida Atlantic University grad earned her medical degree from the University of Miami.
Hi, Ms.
Then she eventually headed west, completing her fellowship training at the University of South Florida. Her mission trips inspired her to create a charity focused on building clinics centered around sustainability.
I started a medical company called Haiti's Elite Medical Team with Haitian doctors to build businesses and to teach people in Haiti how to work and make a living for themselves, and then that goes on generations afterwards.
You also wrote a book.
Yes, it was just to motivate people to not give up, because life is hard. Everybody's got different challenges that we're going through.
Dr. Noel's excellence demonstrated through innovation, creating Scope Shield, a fresh take on medical gowns with added protection to prevent hospital infections.
It basically goes into the trunk here, and then you can hear basically the same as if you didn't have this on.
And it doesn't stop there. Her latest invention centered around pets.
Two things that came to mind is to design a bag that is in the shape of a glove, so that when you go to pick up, the dog feces on the ground, you can grip much easier. So it makes more sense for me to have it actually be in the shape of a glove.
Her ambition fueled by lessons learned from her father.
Average was just not acceptable in our household. My father's philosophy was, you're black, you're female, you're Haitian, like you have all these strikes against you. I've been able to overcome that because of trying my best to be excellent in everything that I do.
Dr. Noel may call her future a work in progress, but her foundation rooted in excellence.
If you drive yourself, you can accomplish basically anything.
Whew, Dr. Noel, she is remarkable. She is like black girl magic at this point. I mean, we're talking 2 inventions. She has her own nonprofit where she goes back to her home country, giving back to the community. Is there anything else she's working on?
She has a 20-year plan ahead of her, not just building clinics, but a hospital. I already saw renderings. It's phenomenal. It's expansive. She doesn't even want to lean on donations. She wants to use her own income to fund it.
And so that's taking place in Haiti.
Correct. And she went to medical school at the University of Miami. She was taking a lot of mission trips over to Haiti, but she said that doesn't go far enough. A lot of these mission trips, they go to Haiti, they do what they can, they return.
Right.
And she says that it's not really keeping up with helping people long term. So that's why she wants to build the hospital. She wants to empower doctors in Haiti and make sure that everyone is focused on sustainability and taking care of themselves, as well as receiving those donations from other countries.
My. Dr. Noel, what a blessing it is to have her just right here in our community. But of course, we know there are so many change makers in the medical field working on those disparities there. And we also have somebody who's working on men's health.
Barbershops are like cultural meccas. There's that sense of safety. There's always good conversation. And historically, barbershops served as a place to get important information quickly. And Antoinette Davis is doing just that. She founded the initiative Barbershop Real Talk, which is where black men get a cut, a health screening, and discuss health and wellness. Now, according to the National Institute of Health, black men have a lower life expectancy and higher rates of chronic disease than other racial groups in the United States. So Davis made it her mission to combat those disparities.
I have 4 sons, so seeing their lack of desire to check on themselves and being the woman in their life that's kind of setting appointments and encouraging them to go and to be well, looking at the data to see how much guys are suffering, and they're suffering silently.
Barbershop Real Talk takes place at Battle Cuts every first Tuesday of the month, and Sheer Excellence every 4th Tuesday of the month in Tampa from 6 to 7:30 p.m.
Well, that's incredible. I love the fact that you could get a cut as well as check on your health, right?
And there were so many people inside this barbershop. People felt like they had gone to church. The conversation was so spirited. And there's a woman who's also making a difference in maternal health. Black maternal health is something you're incredibly passionate about.
I am.
Describe the joys and some of the pitfalls.
Most times in our marginalized communities, we're not celebrated enough. We have the highest death rate and the highest prematurity rate as well. They tend to think it's a social economic issue, but it is all across the board. It does not matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what insurance you have. If you are a black woman going into a hospital setting, you are more likely to have some type of trauma or abuse. And there is a really lack of community in this area, which is what brought me to do this work, because birth is supposed to be a joyous time. I just want to speak love into the Black community. It's like, you know, so many times I was dealing with clients who had never been told they were loved before. I'm like, you on your 6th child, ain't nobody ever told you they love you? She's like, no. I said, well, I love you, and you matter. Your health matters, your baby's health matters, your partner matters. Someone should tell you that and show you that in a medical space and make medical professionals see who they're taking care of. This is not just a Black body. This is a person, and you will treat them with love and respect because I love them.
And what have you seen blossom from there?
I have had the beauty of doing 125 births and watching the blossom of Black people feeling comfortable to birth outside the medical institution. If you don't feel safe there, you have options.
And education is a priority for you.
Absolutely. I believe in healthy, equitable education when it comes to doing birth work. A lot of times you'll see things on like social medias and they'll like highlight the things about it, but not really all the understandings of what you need to do doing birth work. I have been a doula, mentor, and educator for the last several years. I've worked with Common Sense Midwifery Group, the only midwifery school ran and owned by a Black woman, Jenny Josephs, who is amazing. And I've taught and brought different, you know, doula programs here to St. Pete. Many a times I notice in our communities, women in general, we're horrible about that, but Black women especially, we give and 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 give, and we don't know how to pour into each other.
They say you never know when you can be the light in someone's day.
Absolutely, and I'm very thankful that I just get to give them the light that was poured into me. My grandmother, Edna Blake, wanted to be a midwife, and the midwifery school of Gainesville told her no because she was Black, so she became a nurse. So she poured into me what was something that was taken from her.
So if there's one message that you want to share with Black moms out there, what would it be?
You're loved and you matter, and that you deserve phenomenal care. You don't have to settle for subpar care. You don't have to just take what is given to you. There's people out there that will love you and support you. You just got to find us.
We appreciate all of our healthcare workers out there working to combat those disparities. Now, from rare artifacts to forgotten newspaper clippings, we're taking you inside of a hidden gem right here in Tampa, where history lifts itself off of the paper and becomes alive. Stay tuned to see a woman who is working to preserve Black history and inspire the next generation.
This is the best time to collect Black history because we're not certain that it will be available to us tomorrow.
We are living in a time where Black history leads political conversations. However, there are people right here in the Bay Area dedicated to preserving pieces of Black history as well as educating our future. Marilyn Parker introduces us to Ursula Odom.
I'm inside what feels like a time capsule. This is Ursula's History Shop, and there is so much to learn here. Here's something that the shop owner pointed out. This is a Tampa Morning Tribune from 1956. There's a story in here about a Clinton school refusing to ban books on Negroes. That sounds like a lot of the stories that we hear today. Well, I sat down with the shop owners and some folks from the Freedom School to talk about how history and education merge to help shape our future. Pick a date. Now, this is something from the 1800s.
Yes, this is from 1854, part of the collection I got a few years ago.
You can likely find something from that year here in Ursula's History Shop.
That was cool to know that I have a piece of paper that person touched and signed that knew and worked with Frederick Douglass.
Immersed in archives, photos, books, pieces of the past.
How are you able to find this stuff?
I'm looking for it.
Ursula Odom makes time stand still in this shop. It's been years in the making for her, creating a store where all history is documented and showcased.
My family name's in there too.
As a collector, publisher, and writer, Odom says she's always been curious.
The first memory I have is crawling under my grandmother's bed, pulling out a Have a Tampa cigar box, and it was filled with photographs, letters, a lock of her sister's hair, and all things that made me curious about who these people were and why they were so important to my grandmother.
It was talks with her grandmother, listening to her stories, where she realized everyone has a story, but not everyone knows it.
I have a hard time seeing our history go into the garbage because we do it every day.
What is the risk of not looking for our history?
The story being told by someone else incorrectly.
She says the smallest things can make you do research if you let it.
History is trying to teach you something. Are you old enough? Have you had enough experiences? Have you read enough to understand what it's trying to teach you?
Lessons.
Lessons.
Learning.
Learning.
It all goes back to that.
That's right.
She believes education and history go hand in hand. So when she's not organizing her bookshelves,
I see young Mary McLeod and all struggling boys and girls.
She's dressed as the American educator and philanthropist Mary McLeod Bethune, speaking to students, making connections with their own lives and the lessons in front of them. Odom says she wants students to spark their own curiosities.
They may have history walking around in their own house and don't know it because they haven't asked. I kept scrapbooks and journals when I was a kid, and I often talk to them about doing that. And I help them understand that they are history of the future. So the things that they're doing, the things that they're learning, hold on to that.
And she holds on to a lot.
Why do you have this?
What stood out to me had a black hand on it.
And is that something that...
I don't remember seeing advertisement too often where the model is the hand of a black person.
So why is this history?
Because anytime, especially a young person, can look at something and see themselves, it becomes a believable moment.
Odom believes now is the best time to collect history, especially Black history, because she says we don't know if it's always going to be available. And she'd hate to see individuals and cultures lose out on integral parts of the past.
One of the things that I say is that if you don't understand the past, you won't understand what's coming at you. You won't recognize what you're looking at.
Well, that was real to definitely hear from Ursula. But what I love is the fact that we even have people like Ursula who have shops like that right here in Tampa.
It's so important because you should know what's available to you. And there's also people who are just willing to teach it. So the next segment is about the Freedom School. And there's 5 of them across the state, and it's under the premise of educator Carter G. Woodson. And now they're exploring all aspects of Black history. And I thought, what better place to have the conversation than at Ursula's History Shop.
Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration, which comes from the teaching of biography and history. That's from Carter G. Woodson. He was a historian and educator who founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, or ASALH, in 1915.
We are living his dream in terms of living out his legacy.
Sabrina Griffin and Michelle Softly are leaders of ASALH's St. Pete branch. A few years ago, they established the Freedom School, exposing middle and high school students to all aspects of Black history.
We've got this wonderful history right here in the United States, and we need to make sure that it's shared.
Some objectives in the school are to identify major periods in Black history, interpret how different subjects have shaped and were shaped by Black people, and giving a foundation of knowledge to keep learning Black history. But this is bigger than the school or Ursula's shop. They argue education and history shape the world as we know it.
If we fail to learn our history, we are doomed to repeat it.
But how, though? How does not knowing our history doom us in the future?
I mentioned once that my grandmother said, you'll understand it better. You'll understand it better by and by. And what that means is that you have not lived long enough to understand what you see in front of you. You don't understand the lessons that history is trying to tell you. But as you grow older, you realize that the things that were said to you, the books that you read, are now telling you what to do right now.
I want to ask you your visions as far as moving this country and our area forward by holding on to history and making sure we teach it. So what are our individual responsibilities to make that happen?
I think we start locally. And by local, I mean in your home. your own home. Like families should be sharing their own family histories. Families should be, encouraging their children to read.
That's what education is really about. You start learning, but then you start being able to use it for helping you as you progress further down your path. And so I think that's the important part of it.
And that's history.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
There were some negative things happening.
Right.
And yet, people excelled. Yet, people made history in all fields. And that's what we want our young people to know.
Okay, the Freedom School.
Yeah.
One, it's remarkable that they took the initiative to go beyond the scope of school and make sure they are still teaching Black history. But I think one of the biggest takeaways from hearing that story, Marilyn, was the fact that this is nothing new.
That's right. Nothing new under the sun. And also there's that conversation that I'm sure a lot of our grandparents have said before, you'll understand it better by and by. Now that confused me at first.
Okay.
I even had to call my mom because I said, by and by, well, when is the by and by? When are we going to understand? When are we going to see ourselves? And when will our time here be better than it has been before? Because in many aspects, we're still going through it.
Come on.
But what you told me is that we have to remember, even in this moment right now, Deanne, we are actively creating history. History had to happen for you to be right here and navigating and creating a space for us to even honor Black history in the way that you have. So I'm sitting next to a history maker whole time.
Thank you. No, not only does that mean a lot to me, but it really does put into perspective. We look at what's going on today, right? And we're living through Black history as we speak, as we live. And imagine if it wasn't told. Imagine if my child, if your child didn't know about the first Black vice president of the United States, or didn't know about these different lessons that are all throughout our country here in Tampa Bay. So it's so pivotal to have those type of people in our community. I mean, because they're carrying out that legacy.
Exactly. Documenting it is so important. You look at the work that we do as journalists every day. You look at the work that Ursula is doing at her shop. You look at the Freedom School. You look at the Super Bowl. You look at the Grammy Awards. You look at all of these incredible things. It's all a part of our history. It doesn't always have to be bad, but we are walking history every single day. It's beautiful. It's excellence.
It is. Rooted in excellence. Thank you so much, Marilyn. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to be joined by the pastor of Beula Baptist Institutional Church with regards on how we stay rooted in excellence.
We became too many in the Black church, started imitating folks to imitate us. You may not have the big crowd, the packed stadiums, but the crowd you had changes society. Martin Luther King had the biggest church in Atlanta. They forfeit their legacy in some cases for some temporary pleasures. Either you believe in the God that will hold you up or you don't. And if you don't, you need to get out the pulpit and let those of us that are not afraid stand up and say what needs to be said. That's what Dr. King did in his day. That's what we need some today.
All right, that's a lot to unpack from Reverend Al Sharpton. Right now, we're joined by our entire team telling incredible stories, but we're also joined by Pastor Alan Harris, the pastor of this incredible church, Beula Baptist Institutional. When you hear what we just heard from Reverend Sharpton, what's your takeaway?
So I think he's spot on, right? When we look at the history of the Black church, even going back to the Civil Rights Movement, we see how the Black church was in the forefront of the Civil Rights Movement. And so even now here in 2025, we need to get back to the Black church being the place of refuge. The Black church was never the place where individuals would just come to worship on Sunday and then you wouldn't see or hear from them throughout the week. But the Black church had a very prominent role within the community. And so even here at Beula, we try to embrace that same ministry philosophy of the Black church being a place of refuge, a place where you can come and have your heritage affirmed, a place where we have a very prominent role within the community. Individuals know that we're here to care about them.
Can we keep it real for a moment?
Sure.
I mean, do people still believe in the Black church? Marilyn, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's very controversial because, there's a lot of people who say it's religion and not relationships with Christ. And there's a lot of ideals that have changed over the last few years. What is your perspective of that, honestly? Because I know that you encounter so many different people And you hear this question a lot, I'm sure.
Great question, great question. So I think it's important that we don't paint with a broad brush, right? So there are some institutions, some churches where they may focus more so on the religious aspect as opposed to the relational aspect. But I think when we realize, when we do put an emphasis on the relational aspect, we then see our part, we then understand the role that we play in trying to make society a better place.
Wow, I mean, that's good. When we look at being rooted in excellence, right, it does start from the church, but Ty, as you mentioned, it goes beyond these church doors. It goes to from agriculture, just people out in our community. So from your lens, how do we stay rooted in excellence?
Well, it's what we learn in the church. Like when pastors go, look to your neighbor and say, neighbor, yeah, we take that outside onto the farms and to our communities, and we help our neighbors. We speak to our neighbors. We assist in any way possible. We build that community, especially among Black people.
When you were speaking to the farmers, whether it was here in the church or out there on the farm, what do you think it will take to move the needle to get more Black farmers out there for us?
Well, right now, it's going to take education. They got to know that there are scholarships out there. There's that push to really get people involved in the agriculture industry. But right now, people are more or less involved in technology. That's kind of what people like, the younger folks like. So right now, it's going to take a lot of education to try to get them motivated and say, hey, this is important. This agriculture world is very, very important because, again, that's how we put food on our table.
That is very true. Lenny, what about you from your perspective?
I would like to see the community come out besides Christmas, besides Easter, build that relationship throughout the year. Just don't just go to church when you're having hard times. You can celebrate the good times at church as well.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where not everybody believes in God, and that's okay, right? But there's that sense of community somehow where we need to come together. So Pastor Harris, what is that message that you send to your constituents, to your parishioners here at the church, and what's your overall message to people in our community?
Absolutely. So here at Beula, I always tell all of our members, we come here on Sunday, we gather on Sunday to worship, but we gather on Sunday to worship, but we depart to serve. Understanding that we are our brother and our sister's keeper, that whatever they're going through, that we ought to be concerned about it and see how we can be a blessing to them.
Wow, some very incredible words, and I can't wait to see where we go from here as a community, whether it's out there in the field or whether it's out there getting our checkups or whether it's right here in the church. Thank you, guys. During some of our country's darkest times, we have always shined. Black people have endured insufferable terrors, not only in our past, but right now. However, it's always been a dust off the shoulder and showing what you're made of. We hope this special showed you that no matter what may come our way, we were built on the backs of tenacious ancestors who were nothing but excellent. Stay rooted. Good night.